Morning guys, it's the market sniper, the crypto sniper and the reset sniper. How are you guys doing? Yay! Is it day 4? Is it day 5? Jeez, I'm starting to lose track here. Morning of day 5. It's your update for tour day 4. This is where the bike slept last night. So what am I going to talk about? Horses for courses. So I'm below average here in this group. We got some youngsters that are properly talented enduro stars, motocross stars, that literally ride their enduro bikes off the back of that truck if they need their bike unloading. There's their 2 bikes. So I want to talk to you about horses for courses today, and I'm going to tie it into the financial system and how and where we are at the moment. So you have probably the heaviest bike, my big beast over there. Let's start with it. There's 2 of us. My mate is a significantly better rider than me. So this is around 265 kilograms of metal. Let's point to him right. And it's got a top box on it with some extra water because I overheat and go on tilt. And then you get this bike, for example, over here, which is about half, probably less than half, about 35-40% of the weight, and more travel, knobblier tires because the GS is a compromise for road and tarmac, as well as light dirt challenging. Just got my ice in the hand there for the pack, while that is a full-on dirt bike. So horses for courses. I'm talking about motorcycles, and you might not even be interested in motorcycles. It's a nice camp, by the way. I'll show you a bit more of the camp while we go. That's the truck he rides his bike off, by the way, when it was tethered on. He actually wheelies my 265 kg GS at 100 plus kilometers per hour when I put him on it. So what happened? Let's update you. And what's it got to do with anything financial? Well, let's join some dots here. So we hit hectic sand, and my arms just get exhausted. You get a lot of swivel, a lot of wiggle, a lot of bicep, and particularly forearm pump for gripping, because when you get hyper-adrenalized by this hectic swiveling of this big bike like this, doing this, let's help make you seasick a little bit so you can get the feeling. You grab on your natural, especially when you're a below average rider, you're expecting to fall. You go into a hyper-adrenalized state, and you squeeze like hell. You're holding the handles and you just grip for all dear life. It's a natural response to complete loss of stability and swiveling like this. And what it does is you're essentially doing an isometric, where you're clenching your arms and they're being pulled forward and back involuntarily. It's beyond your control, because as the sand gets hotter, it actually disperses more. So they say early morning sand, it actually clusters a little bit, you can ride a bit better. But as we get into the heat of the day, it expands, and it's just like powder, and it pushes, and it's not flat. Other people have ridden before you and made all these squivels and weaves as they've skidded their way through. So you end up in semi-ruts, soft ruts as you can call them, and as a result it's exhausting. And eventually you either fall or you slow down, which is usually what I do eventually, because you keep gassing. It's like a runaway train. The only way you survive, and I've got a clip of going into some pretty heavy sand at about 83 k's per hour and coming out of it at about 96, hitting 102 at one point, because you've got to just keep gassing, otherwise you fall. But the minute you come off the juice, you start to do this again. So it's a white knuckle ride where you actually pour more power on, and it's really, really tough. And then afterwards you just feel adrenal fatigue, and I'm an adrenaline fuel guy. I often get all the guys saying silly comments like I have high energy because I'm passionate about what I do, and I run a lot off adrenal anger, lots of things like that. So when you get hyper-adrenalized, your heart rate goes up. Whoosh. So when I stop, and I've checked this once or twice with our rolling medic, I go up to about 140 beats a minute. And it's because you're in this pre-fight or flight where you're expecting an immediate event. It's almost worse than not falling for a long time. Is almost worse for you adrenally than having a quick fall, because then you get a forced rest and you get up. It's kind of like you're on this verge of having a fight with somebody, and it keeps coming, and it looks like he's almost going to attack, and he's almost going to attack, and you're in hyped mode, and it never happens, and it goes on and on and on. You just get an adrenal fatigue. So that's what happens to average riders doing technically difficult stuff. And you're probably still wondering, what's this got to do with financials? I will join the dots for you, but I just want to give you some of the narrative of something totally different. And this is why I always say trading is a microcosm of life and all challenges generally. And in this particular one, as I say, I'm bottom of the class or low end, and it doesn't matter. We're all varying degrees of various other things, and I'm quite happy to admit that I'm quite ordinary, but I enjoy it nonetheless. And you certainly feel alive, and you feel like you've kind of achieved something when you get to the end of the day, but you're exhausted. Anyway, so what I did is I stopped, and one of the enduro guys that are the younger lads that are actually almost like pro MX guys came along, and I put him on my GS, and I take his 465 that I just showed you, the red Honda CRF, if you're a fan of bikes, and I jump on that. And then it's different level. It's got a much more knobbly tire. Every time you hit the gas, you just straighten out. It's handling the sand far better. It's designed for it. And while I'm still tired and pre-fatigued now by riding the other machine, it's clearly a lot easier, and I'm able to finish it. And this is almost an example of having the right tools for the trade, especially when you, without being exceptional, that you can master various sets of circumstances. And you know, the GS is beautiful for tarmac, dirt roads, and if you're and light sand. Heavy sand, you need proper skills, because essentially you're using one spanner for all things. It's a Swiss Army knife for long distance getting around on most things. However, it's not a specialist tool. It's not a socket set with the exact sized spanner. And I could finish on the better tool, but I would have been wrecked and not been able to, because once you start stopping because you're fatigue and your heart rate, it takes a while for your heart rate to come down. It comes down, but it doesn't go down to a resting heart rate. My resting heart rate, I'm lucky, I've got quite a strong heart. My resting heart rate in the morning is around mid-50s. When I was in the army, I got sub 40, so I've got a powerful heart, but it gets proper on the go, turbocharged on the adrenal stuff. And when it's run up to deep into the hundreds, like 130, 100, it drops to about 110. So when I have the medic check, it's still 110. It'll go back up to 140 quite quickly, and your arms are already exhausted. So what's this got to do with financial systems? Let me just start with the financial systems. There are tools that were right for a certain set of circumstances in the financial system for those times. So the 60% equity, 40% bond portfolio, for example, has been the right tool for most of the journey of the last 40 years. You've had an equity and bond bull market, and when the equities had a couple of off years, the bonds were usually strong because they were counter-cyclical. When people were afraid, they bought bonds and they reduced equity exposure, and the bonds went up in value, and it counteracted what you lost on your equity portfolio. And this was my criticism. I've quoted a couple of things that Tony Robbins did on his book Money, because he's never really been the money guy, but he decided to go and do it. He went and spoke to Ray Dalio, got a bit stuck into that. And he said, the magic portfolio, this is it, you all need to go to my link to get it. And it's essentially a bonds equity portfolio of how, you know, you have the portfolio for all seasons. And I'm saying that's wrong. I'm saying if your data is the last 40 years, yes, it was the portfolio for all seasons, absolutely. But you are not. You are not a segment of that data. If you were born such that you started investing in 1982 and you ended investing a year ago and you were retired, you got away with it. But the difference is you're hitting the deep sand now. You're hitting the deep sand where your Swiss Army knife of 60-40 portfolio both go down, nothing works for you. You feel the weight of the goddamn bike. You don't have the deep dig tires because you've got a multi-purpose wheel on, and the fall, you fall harder because you've got more weight, you've got momentum, you've got 265 kilograms of pig iron steel and cylinder chucking you forward, and you smash your knee into it as you go over the bars or whatever the hell. Everything now doesn't feel so right anymore because the conditions have changed. The conditions have changed that you've not experienced before. You could be an everyday rider on a GS, riding through traffic, going to work, and occasionally doing a weekend blast on some dirt roads. But if you come up to the Kalahari and you go here, the border of Botswana, just over here, by the way, we were riding alongside it. I hope to get, there's been very scanty internet, so these updates may run a little bit in arrears, but we'll be getting them to you. So it might not be on the day for the day that you're watching this, but the message is generic and it's valuable. So what I'm saying is, this is reset season. This is reset season. And in reset season, you need a reset bike. The red bike I showed you is reset bike. That is when all shit goes down. There's no infrastructure. There's no tarmac road. There's not even a nicely graded dirt road. It is quicksand every single way. You need a big ass rubber knobbly tire with big studs digging in and finding traction anywhere, ready to churn out and push sand out the way and keep you going forward. With a big front shock and a light front wheel, and you sit back on it and you let that big knobbly tire dig in to the dirt and drive you straight forward. You don't want a top-heavy, massive tank with huge range over the front wheel. You don't want to be carrying heat warmers and lots of lovely gimmicks and mod cons on your almost a car with features GS that all add up to 265 kilos before you've even finished putting fuel, your own weight, your water kit, your camel pack, adding your own 110 kilo self, which is made up of 90 kilogram yourself and the better part of 10-15 kilos of clothing, padding, top box, thermoflask to have cold water, all of this, and your kitchen canteen on the back. That is not the best tool for the conditions. Very powerful, very smart people can still get by and do very well, as my colleague on the GS has shown, is very planted in the sand and just keeps softer hands than me. But the average man can't, and in this case I'm very average. So you are in reset season. It's time for the light dirt bike, go anywhere. That won't do 200 Ks on a highway and be comfortable at all. It won't do, but this is not highway days. This is not highway days. This is reset season. And this typical advice that you get from an IFA, they've been programmed, brainwashed, forced to write exams, portfolio theory. I've seen all of this. I've done the MBA. I've looked at IFA. I thought about being an IFA many years ago because obviously I've always had an interest in the financial markets, and I can tell you they got drummed into them. It's a bit like Pink Floyd, The Wall, where you see individual children sitting at school desk going through a furnace, and they all come out with the same melted faces. It's just a big brainwash into this kind of portfolio theory. Well, you must have a little bit of risk, and you must have a little bit of no risk, and you must do this and a sprinkling. And everyone who goes, oh, only really 5% gold and all of that. In reset season, where everything is going to go digital, could have a very high risk of going to near zero or being rolled into a CBDC whose terms you're unlikely to like yourself, which is going to be very good for them and very shit for you, or debt jubilees where a lot of you might inadvertently be owners of debt through your pension, actually things physically held are very, very good. Gold is that enduro motorcycle. Silver is that enduro motorcycle. The all-weather terrain, when things go pear-shaped, you can still go crashing your way through the bush, even if there isn't a road, is the all-weather motorcycle. Digital cash is not very handy. In power down, mobile grid down, and I'm already experiencing that, lack of reduced internet, all of that. If you suddenly need to buy something, you need medical care, you need whatever, it isn't going to be your guy. So horses for courses is about recognizing that the course that you are in financially has changed, very much like the day I was having yesterday, where the sand was deep, and just to get started, once you've taken a stop in the sand is hard. The little middle manaki, the bit in the middle, is also soft sand, and your bike just breaks through it like a crust, and your rear wheel just spins up. If you put it in first, you almost have to pull off in second. It's too torquey, not enough traction on the rear wheel. It's just the wrong horse for the course if you're the everyday guy. It takes a particularly talented rider to come out of that. Now the difference is, in this game, I don't even think if you're a very talented 60-40 investor that you're going to do that great. Even if you're super talented, you're not going to get to go that fast. Because which equities do you buy? Yes, you can buy the defensive equities, the utilities. You can maybe get some silver miners. They'll go down. They have some risk of potential nationalization in some countries. But you might do okay if you did that. How do you keep any bonds that will do well? Which bonds will do well? Well, I don't know any bonds I want to own. So I think you're going to be on a hiding to nothing almost anywhere. You might have TLT, you know, the inflation indexed ones that actually do go up a little bit, but they lie about the inflation number. It's much worse. So you'll only be marginally less bad. So even the best rider on the GS in the super soft sand would do a whole bunch better on the enduro bike. So horses for courses means recognizing what the course is so that you choose the right horse. This is not racehorse territory anymore. It's a different kind of horse. It's a bush horse that you want. A tough, gnarly, doesn't get upset by the thorns, isn't skittish, and will just keep going through the heat. You need a donkey almost here, as funny as it sounds, using all the analogies. We see plenty of wild donkeys. They survive and thrive here. They pull carts all day long. You don't want a racehorse out here. They'll be absolutely ragged in this heat. They will hate having to lift their big heavy legs out of soft sand all the time. They don't have a big enough hoof to weight distribution. It's again an analogy for the right horse for the right course. And you are in a financial time where the whole game has changed. And most people don't recognize it because people's frame of reference is emotional. It's always worked for me before, therefore I stick to it. No, it worked for you before because it suited the time that you were in. Look and see the sand. It's there. It's out there in that road. It's no longer tarmac. And make a change before you have a change forced on you, and then it's too late. Then you end up locking in a loss. Once you're in a losing position, there is a reluctance emotionally to lock in losses. The first loss is the big loss. That's why the UK pensions didn't want to sell their bonds, and that's why the Bank of England said, we're closing your door on Friday if you don't. So do now or forever hold your peace. So they had to take forced losses on debt that they'd bought at a much higher value that had dropped. But actually, the first loss is their best loss because it's no longer sustainable. On that point, the Bank of England will never leave. They're in the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you never leave. They're going to have to do exactly what? In the same way that the Euroland is buying French debt, Italian debt, and will soon be buying every nation state's debt, in my opinion, the British will have to buy their own debt and hold that door open. 19 billion wasn't enough. They've got to support the Ponzi just like Japan, which is why the previous video I did for you was about the USD JPY and the community getting back in and around the 143s, 144s, and now you've run up to 149. Yield curve control only ends one way. So debt is going to have to re-rate substantially. Interest rates are going to have to re-rate. You're going to have a stubborn level of inflation. that will rarely drop down. Those low, super low inflation, you'll never have that again. It was a combination of globalization combined with technology, ease of, a lot of remote working, and all of these things spawned a once-off ability for you to buy cheap goods made by lowest cost of labor in the entire globe. Now we're deglobalizing back down, and now we've had all this asset price hyperinflation. The inflation started in assets the whole 1982 right the way up to 2020. Was a surge in assets price inflation. There was always inflation. Central banks are inflationists. It was all in the assets to an extreme degree. And now those have to decontract back down, and the rates have to go up. We have to go back down. Your Goldilocks period, that Greenspan was the author of, from coming in after the 1987 crash, the beginning of my trading and investing career, is over. And as a result, all the ones that followed him, that continued the same Ponzi scheme, that saw all the central banks take all the same action, you're now over. So the course has changed. It's the end of the 40-year cycle. When we called the top of the bond market in August 2020 and said, this is the first inverted HVF in a new trend. This is going to be a cyclical turn, and you will go down to a potential neckline here, have a rally and form a head and shoulder as a possible scenario cast. All of that transpired. That was the call of the top. That was the end of the 40-year cycle. August 2020 was the beginning of the great descent in debt, and since then it's accelerated onwards and down at a very, very strong rate. And people don't realize something that inflates so slowly over 40 years deflates chronically, suddenly and violently. You've gone from an autobahn where you can do 300 kilometers per hour, you're in a Porsche Turbo S, and you've suddenly not only hit a dirt road, you've gone straight into a soft sand road, and you've got a car with ground clearance like that. Even worse, say a Ferrari Stradale. It's the wrong tool. You've been going too fast and you've been assuming forever, and the road ended, and now you have soft sand. And that is the message. That is what I mean by horses for courses, and that is the strong and as harsh as look at the monthly chart of the TLT, which is long-term American debt, which is the one that is doing least badly of all of them. Go and look at the British and the Japanese, which is being pushed onto the currency. The devaluation it has taken, a large amount of it has been pushed through the currency because there's two pressure valves. The FX and the debt markets work hand in hand. So there's two pressure valves, and the sudden deflation in the debt market, they're trying to slow it down. How do they do it? They put a bid under the debt market and they print more currency. So they kill the currency. So the actual loss you are taking in the bond market is so acute. It is the sum of your currency's devaluation to the dollar and the bond market that it's lost actually. In real terms, dollar terms, your debt has lost. If you're in the British pound, when you were at 142 in our head and shoulder in 21, when we called that head and shoulder, and you've now run all the way down to as low as 103 and bounced, I don't even know what it is today, but let's say it's 110, 109, you've lost your currency devaluation in dollar terms, and you've lost what that debt market has done. They are trying to mask the rate at which the debt market is devaluing by passing some of that loss onto the currency, because people do not realize they're losing on two fronts. And in the Japanese yen's case, you've gone from 107 to almost 150. You've lost 42% since the currencies started. And they're trying to hold the debt. The debt's not lost anything. Really, it hasn't. It hasn't lost anything. But the currency is fucked, and is going to get further fucked. To what? Maintain your pension scheme for your inverted pyramid demographics in Japan, so your little old ladies that bought Bank of Japan bonds for the last 30 years don't get put underwater? You're going to kill your currency, and now you have to import fuel and gas, all these energy reliant nations, and it's all priced in a dollar that your currency's lost 40% to. Can you see the course has changed? You've smashed into the soft sand in your Ferrari SF90, doing 300 kilometers an hour, and it's the wrong vehicle. You needed the Land Rover Defender, and now you're in this. Jump out, change cars, see it now. Horses for courses, get out. Get on the enduro bike, off the fucking big heavy GS. Get out of your Ferrari, get into the Land Rover Defender. The Land Rover Defender is gold, silver, and physically held things. A good property that you live in, and it is zero debt because they will spike the rates so that they can force you out of your asset at the bottom of the cycle. Okay, that's my story. That's the analogy. That's what's happening. That's what's going down. Horses for courses means change car, change bike, change horse. The course has changed. Okay, catch you later. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share, and themarketsniper.com for booking a call. 3 W's, themarketsniper.com. Book a call, get defense ready. And there's reset things you should be doing. A foundation. Use their tools that they use against them, because they choose them to protect themselves. We do all of this. You should have a foundation. You don't have to be a millionaire to have a foundation, guys. And it doesn't cost millions to set up. But you must protect your assets, and you must hide behind the same legalese that they use to protect theirs. So you can also email support@themarketsniper to do that. Get your gold and silver, not in your personal name, in your foundation name. It lives forever. Okay, catch you next time. Book a call, themarketsniper.com. Share and like. Appreciate it. Have a good time.